Welcome to the second episode of the BorderTrain DEVLOG series. In this episode I'm going to be working on the 3D models for the game. But first, let me tell you a little bit about it in case you don't know. In BorderTrain, you begin work as the manager of a train station. However, the job is not what you expected, as a deadly virus breaks out, causing lots of traffic from refugees. Not helping the situation is that bad actors are using the disaster as a way to infiltrate the city. By keeping track of the station's resources, you must prevent the infected, spies and terrorists from entering the city before it's too late. Alright, now that you know what happens in the game, let's recap what happened in the last episode so you have a better idea of what I'm doing in this video.
Loading the sanatorium. Loading complete. Loading the station. Loading complete.
In the last episode, I finished these concepts of what I want the main buildings to look like. I was also drawing an isometric view in the form of this illustration. For the demo game, I did a simple top-down view, but with these more intricate and obviously much larger buildings, a different angle seems fitting. I chose to have the station building be in the front from our point of view, since it's the smaller building and symmetrical from both directions, meaning that you're not missing anything by only seeing this side, whereas the front facade is what really makes the sanatorium so magnificent. Although I have started to consider a few different options as well. It was a little difficult at first to visualize how the buildings would look in 3D, especially since my knowledge of Blender is very primitive. This was actually my first time ever trying to make a structure. All my other attempts so far have been character models. Starting with the station building due to its simpler shape, I used the front-facing illustration as a guide for the facade, while the blueprints functioned as, blueprint. I do wish I would have made a scythe profile of the buildings as well, but having these two angles worked just fine for now. I was already aware of the mirror modifier, which works basically the same way as a mirror tool in any two-dimensional art program, but in a three-dimensional space. This allowed me to make both sides of the building symmetrical, though I realized later that I needed to mirror the station building in the Y and X axis. I used the E shortcut for extending surfaces so much. When making the roof, I came across an issue with the front face. It had a slight diamond shape, which is barely visible in the footage, but basically all those little dots, they're called vertices by the way, they're all on slightly different X coordinates since I placed them all manually. Even though for a flat wall, you'd want them all to be aligned on the same plane. This is where I got help from my friend Chris, who showed me a bunch of little tricks for Blender. I just needed to press S for scale, X for the coordinate, and 0 to set them on the same plane. Ta-da! I used this one a lot. The sanatorium was very similar to make, just extending and adjusting vertices. I found that pressing R for a loop cut also came in handy. It just makes a cut all around the spot that you chose. This building was obviously a lot more complex to make, but with the experience that I got from the station building, it was quite easy. The only other notable thing that I can think of is that this is where Chris informed me about the shade smooth option, or in this case auto smooth. Basically, without this option selected, all the places where there's a seam will be shaded as a hard edge, and with this selected, they will be shaded as a smooth surface. It's so satisfying. Actually, working in 3D has always been very difficult for me to wrap my mind around, but I believe that modern tools like Blender make it very easy for you. Not to mention that it's free. It just needs some time to adjust to the new mechanics, but once you do, it's fairly simple and you get to apply lots of things that you've learned from 2D art programs. Not to mention that you can literally just type what you need into a search engine of your choice, and hundreds of tutorials are right there. We really live in a revolutionary time for artistic expression. What about the coding? This is a devlog, right? I'm not seeing any coding so far. So, I need to address something. I'm going to be using Godot as my game engine for BorderTrain. The learning process has been slow so far, but I did make a sneak game using this tutorial with some slight adjustments that I added myself. The plan is to slowly learn how to use Godot behind the scenes, and I can't unfortunately document too much of this process for now because it's incredibly tedious and I wouldn't even know what to say or how to present it to you because it's a mess. So, before I start coding the full game, I'm going to be coding the demo version in Godot as suggested by a more experienced coder. This should be easier since I obviously already have all the assets done for that game. Once I have more experience with Godot, I'll feel more comfortable coding everything that's needed for the full game. The thought process here is that I'm going to make all the necessary 3D and 2D assets before any real coding, then proceed with the coding, and once the game works, then finish up the visuals and add the embellishments. I have a pretty clear idea for how I want the mechanics to work, and from my experience with coding the demo in Scratch, it all becomes clear once you actually start figuring out how to set the mechanics in place with code. Anyway, here's how the models turned out so far. Obviously, they're still missing some crucial parts, like the glass dome of the sanatorium, the doors, windows, and textures, but it's a good start, I think. I used art from the demo to make this placeholder ground. I'm pretty sure that I could get away with having most of the details just be textures, because of the isometric view. I've probably mentioned that I do want the player to be able to look inside the buildings, but I do believe that I'll need to cheat it somehow. I doubt you'd be able to look inside the buildings in this view, just due to their scale. For this section, I only have some pictures of how I designed the uniforms. I'm a little embarrassed because I had so much trouble with the guard uniform. I wanted to try something cool and unique, and I had this idea in my head but nothing seemed to work. Eventually, I made this very simple design. I mean, it just looks like the most basic uniform ever, but it'll do for now. I added some details to make it clear that it's a guard uniform, like the key on the belt, because well, a guard is guarding something that's supposed to be locked away, right? The guard arm patch is also just a basic shield. I tried out a few different versions of the shield throughout this video, but I'm sure I'll figure out something for it eventually. Note also the Lara Croft inspired double pistols. The nurse uniform was actually super easy, because I just kinda copied it from this Spanish soap opera that my grandma watches. There's these servant women in that show who wore an apron like this, and I was like, yeah, that works. Oops. I did try to make it unique by having a belt with a medkit and an arm pad with a red cross and a hat. I added some angel wings to the hat as a reference to the white angel herself. Next, I did want to have the two default characters ready for this video, so I'm introducing the faithful nurse and the faithful guard. These two will be with you from the very beginning of the game, while others need to be unlocked. Before I go on to explaining some new mechanics I brought up, let me talk a little about these two. The faithful nurse is actually a character that I designed a long time ago. She has been a part of the cast ever since this was supposed to be a novel. She has went through some changes over the years, and she was one of the few characters featured in the loading screen of the demo. I wanted to give her very friendly and charming features to really lean into the fact that she's, well, faithful to you. This part of her design was not actually there from the very beginning, but at some point I started to draw her hair as if it's shaped like angel wings. It's the most obvious in this latest design, specifically in her bangs, which are lighter than the rest of her hair. And I always imagined that she's a little chubby. The faithful guard is a character that I actually just made up because I needed to make something for the guard as well. But I didn't want to use the guard design in the loading screen since that's supposed to be a different character. So I came up with the idea that the faithful nurse and the guard are actually twins. Hooray for me! I just need to slightly adjust the hair to make it shorter and make the facial features more masculine to make him look like a guy. I do actually really like the idea of these two being twins because they both have a sweet personality. I imagine they wave at each other from the other side of the railway, and when the train stops, they stop, and once it leaves again, they wave at each other again, like, hi! Oh, hi again! That's a little stupid. Where their personalities would differ, I imagine that the nurse is very aware of social standards and always trying to act all proper and fancy, while the guard tends to be more in his own world and just kinda doing his thing. Oh no, this is reminding me of another set of twin characters that I have. Oh well. Weirdly enough, both the twin characters that I have are also a girl and a boy. Oh, is that rare for twins to be of opposite sexes? I'm actually not that familiar with twin biology. Sorry. Anyway, so what have I planned for the unlocking system? To recap, in the demo, you would just buy a guard or nurse for 100 marks each. They just appear in the station and do their thing. However, I realized pretty quickly after finishing that if someone plays for longer, it's going to get very crowded in there. Since there's no limit on how many you can buy, besides Scratch's limit of only being able to create 300 clones of one sprite, so technically the limit is 300, but no one is gonna play that far. Now you may ask, Kitty, why don't you just put a limit in place manually? Well, you see, for the game to function, you do need to keep somehow improving your statistics to fight the virus and spies. And that's where I realized I'm just going to make a cast of around 6 to 10 characters for each side, which you'll be able to level up or upgrade individually using marks. But unlocking won't happen by, just buying them. Instead, you'll be given a task, and once completed, you'll be able to unlock the character. I'm still thinking about if you'll need to pay a specific amount and complete the task. That would add some more challenge, but let me know what you think. I also think that investing more into a few individual characters instead of just an army of nameless clones will be beneficial for the marketing, since I know how much you people love those precious characters. It will also make the world feel more alive. I actually had 2 failed attempts of trying to make the nurse model before just giving up on it for a while and making the buildings in the meantime. After the experience that I gained with the buildings, I noted a few key things that contributed to why my first 2 attempts failed. First, I was trying to make the model based on a front picture alone, which didn't even have the legs showing, so I basically just had to guess how they would look. The concept art of the nurse uniform also used more realistic proportions, but since I am going for a low poly look, it seemed more optimal to try something more cartoony that would fit the character concept that I did for the Faithful Twins. And second, the picture used lots of round curves and tapered edges. When making a low poly model, I found from a tutorial that it's actually much easier to just make the plan itself with those straight lines and sharper edges. This will help you to place the vertices in the correct spots. With this new knowledge, I went and made these new plans. I made sure to also just plan the naked model. This way, I'll be able to use the same basic body to add different embellishments and make different characters. There are 2 angles that I was going to need to know how to make the model, the front and the side. But I made a back angle as well just for clarity. The different colors indicate which parts of the model will be separate from each other. Then, based on the body, I just drew the uniform on top of it. I did forget a few things, like the ribbons at the back of the nurse's uniform and their ears, but I'll be adding those in a future video. Before I even started modeling, I wanted to also plan out the style in which I would make the textures, so I made up this random nurse design just to figure it out. She is pretty random, so she probably won't be an actual character, unless you really want her to, I guess. For the base model, I just made this very odd hand shape. I will probably make more hand poses for the future and just switch between them, if that's possible, I mean. But for now, I made this very basic shape to keep things simple. I only made a female nurse and a male guard for now, but I do have ideas for the opposites as well. I'm sorry that I didn't really have much to say for the making of these models. I'll leave the links to the tutorials that I watched to make them in the description, but what I did find out while making the female model is that it's actually very easy to completely change the body type just by moving around the vertices, since I made it by just moving around the vertices of the male body which I made first. I wasn't sure if that was going to work. I figured that I can't exactly just pluck a rib from this 3D model and make a woman, but I'm so glad that it worked out. This is also how I'll be making different body types, like the faithful nurse. Her model will be shorter and chubbier. I also found out for some reason that I can't export them as GLTF files, like it just won't let me. I'll have to do something about that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please let me know what you thought. Thank you. Well, anyway, I'm very tired, so hyviä yötä.